Hi, thanks for joining me today. Today I'm just going to do a quick video that will show you how I did the focal image for this Christmas card. This is using one of the new sets from the 2012 Stampin' Up! Holiday Catalog. This is called Evergreen, and it's a two-step stamping set, which means that these three images, could even be a three-step stamping, depending upon how you want to do it. These three tree images coordinate with one another and are meant to be layered on top of each other. So I'm starting with a piece of very vanilla cardstock, and this measures 2 3/4 by 3 3/4, and you can see I've already gone ahead and rounded all the corners with my corner rounder punch. I'm using Old Olive ink, and the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and stamp the words, and these are actually the words to Silent Night. I love any kind of text image, so this is a really pretty stamp. I'm just going to go ahead and stamp this tree image in the center of my cardstock. And then you want to just give that a second to make sure that it's completely dry. Next we're going to take the solid tree stamp, and I'm actually going to ink this up with my Versamark ink pad. And of course you can use your Stamp-O-Majig if you like, but I find that this set is actually fairly easy to line up, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So you're just going to stamp that right over top of the words with the Versamark. And now you're not going to be able to see that on camera, but it is there. Then I'm going to take my clear embossing powder, and I like to keep my embossing powder that I use the most often, at least, in these Tupperware containers. These are just the disposable cheap ones from the grocery store, and I keep a spoon inside, and this way I don't have to mess with a scrap paper or anything to, to have to try to dump my embossing powder back in the little jar. I can just sprinkle it on and tap off the excess right back into my Tupperware. Just make sure there's no extra anywhere on there. So now I'm just going to go ahead and use my heat gun to melt the embossing powder just until it turns shiny. Oops. There you can see where the embossing is. So now this is the fun part. I'm going to get a piece of scratch paper, and I'm going to bring in my Old Olive ink pad again. And I have one of these little sponge daubers, and Stampin' Up! Sells these. I really like this kind of sponge dauber because it fits on your finger, and it's small, and so you can really control where the ink is going. If you have Stampin' Sponge, you could certainly use that for this technique as well. But I'm just going to go ahead and get some ink on my sponge, and then I like to go ahead and just remove honestly, a lot of the ink. I know I just work to get that ink on my sponge, but it's easier for me to try to remember that you can always add more ink, but you can never take it away. So I like to start with not a lot of ink on my sponge. And then I'm going to start in the center of my tree. And I'm just going to kind of work in a circular motion and just sponge this ink so that the darkest part of my sponging is around the outside, just the outside edge of the tree. And then you can go back in if you want to make it just a little bit darker. Remember, you can always add more ink. And I also like to control the amount of ink that I'm laying down on the paper with the pressure that I'm using. So as I work my way out here, I'm going to keep sponging, starting in the center every time. And I'm going to work my way out with less and less pressure as I move towards the edges, so that you get this really pretty gradient effect where it's darkest right around your tree, and then it gets lighter and lighter as it moves towards the edges. I'll just keep starting in the middle of my tree and working my way out. And then you don't want to cover this piece completely. You want to make sure that there are kind of some splotchy parts so that your image has some highs and lows to it. And you want it to sort of fade out and be brighter around the very edges. Every time I re-ink my sponge dauber, I'm kind of dabbing off the excess. And then once I get it to where it's close to how I like it to look, I like to just kind of go back in with a very, very, very light touch and blend the ink a little bit more between where sort of the medium color is and the dark color. And then the very last step, I like to just buff over the embossed image with a paper towel and get off any of the ink that's sort of stuck. You can see there's a little bit of ink on my paper towel, ink that's stuck to that embossing powder. And there you can see you have a very pretty and very simple focal image for your card. I'll bring my card back in. Now this would be very beautiful and very effective on a clean and simple card, but I decided to make mine a little bit more on the fancy side. I used the new Coordinations cardstock with the embossing folder. I think this is called Lacy Brocade. It's in the holiday catalog. And I mixed the old olive color with the summer starfruit, and I used a piece of the summer starfruit designer paper. This is some of the very vanilla seam binding ribbon. And then I just punched 3 little tags that I clear embossed 2 of them with one of the flourishes from the Tiny Tag stamp set, and then I stamped the Merry sentiment from that same stamp set, and I tied those on with some linen thread. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you enjoyed this layered emboss resist technique, and I hope that you give it a try on your card projects. I'll see you next time. Happy stampin'. Bye-bye.